can you please try to ensure that this is considered? And for those who wanted to remain, and also for those who wanted to leave, if we wish to retain our EU citizenship, we may do so. Thank you.
My understanding that that is a fundamental kind of requirement, absolutely, but we will double check that.
Hi, Heidi. My name's Gary Clayton. I'm Vice Chair of the Constituency Labour Party in South Coast. And we wrote to you requesting that you work with us for the Lib Dems.
That was last night, was it? I think that's what we emailed.
The Lib Dems, I think.
Oh, the Lib Dems.
Yeah, the Lib Dems wrote yesterday, a group saying also that they wanted to work together to challenge the legal status of the referendum. And I've been grappling with the idea, because we didn't have a lot of expert input really during the referendum campaign, I don't feel, and there was so much that was overlooked. And so I went and found out a little bit of expert advice and expert opinion on the legal status. And for instance, Geoffrey Robertson QC says before Article 50 can be triggered, we have to repeal. There has to be the repeal of the European Communities Act of 1972, and it has to be repealed by the Sovereign Parliament of the UK. So that means both houses. So the chances of that happening are very slim, I would suggest. And there's also opinion around the question of judicial review from a legal expert at Trinity College that says that because the Referendum Act made no mention of any legal status of the result, that actually such a momentous change for a country based on the referendum that made no reference to the legal status of it could be challenged. For me, I think we should challenge it, and it's not to say that 48% or 52% population vote is any more important than the other, but it's such a massive change for the country. Surely there has to be a period of reflection, and Parliament, as Tam Dale said the other night, I won't use the language that he did because it was rather Anglo-Saxon language, so basically the MPs have to have the courage to stand up and say, we hear you, we hear the questions that this has raised, both about the UK and about the structure of the European Union, but we have to assert the sovereignty of the British Parliament, of the UK Parliament, and take that decision as MPs. And I would still really like to propose to you that you work with us in Labour, with the Lib Dems. We haven't heard from Greens yet, but I would imagine with the MP that they have, that they would also be in favour of that. So I would like to say again, open up and say, yes, let's work together, but let's not just say we have to get on with it.
Perhaps try and respond to that. So first and foremost, in terms of cross-party working, absolutely. I think anybody that knows anything about me knows that I'm a big believer in that, so that's a given. And this is what I said about the constitutional lawyers who are bringing their hands together and starting to make money out of this already. And you're right, this is the biggest constitutional question I think we've yet faced, certainly in my lifetime and probably my parents' lifetime. And I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know the answer. So this will, it will undoubtedly come to the House for debate. But as I say, I think, all of this is this pros and cons. It's this poker hand. The longer we debate it, I worry that just my feeling, I worry that we might weaken our hand with Europe. So, we have the constitutional debate. As I say, I think the more likely thing would be possibly a second referendum. I don't know. We have to see how the situation evolves. But I personally would be nervous at telling 42% of the country that we don't want to listen to them. I think that would be very dangerous.
But you're not saying 52.
Sorry, 52. Alice, you take the question.
Francis Edgemore, Coordinator for Britain Stronger in Europe in North Hertfordshire. Given that bilateral trade negotiations between England and the EU cannot begin until England has actually left the European Union, and that's 2 years following Article 50, how do we cope with the economic turmoil that could ensue? Have you identified specific vulnerabilities in this region? Secondly, whilst Cambridge University Vice-Chancellor Borisevich's words of reassurance are welcome, the fact is that England will have to leave Horizon 2020 if it leaves the EU. It may join as an associate country, but it will have no influence on the direction of the research programs in Europe after that. Have you been talking with academic partners and commercial companies in this region about the possible fallout?
Yes, I mean, as I tried to, this was the first meeting I had yesterday. You know, you'd appreciate this has been a pretty busy week, but the first opportunity I had yesterday, and that's exactly the community I brought together to start thinking about all of the fallout. As I mentioned, you know, just as one figure to mention is 11% of the workforce at Addenbrooke's. That's exactly the piece of work that we're going to do now. Look at the precise risks that are unique to this region. We will share some of them with, you know, other areas in the country, but that's the piece of work that we need to do now to, you know, to safeguard ourselves through this period of, you know, vulnerability and turbulence. You know, it's not just economic, it's in so many areas, but yes, that piece of work is starting.
Hi, I'm Ginny Carr, I work for the University of Cambridge. My questions, I'm afraid there's 3 of them that have bubbled up. First of all, what are the chances of there being a general election before 2020, i.e. really soon, and some candidates coming forward to say, if you vote for me, I'll overturn this? Secondly, what are the chances of MPs, including yourself, when it's time to ratify this, if that's the right word, in Parliament, of saying, I'm sorry, I will not do that. I think we're better off staying in Europe, and enough MPs doing that to overturn the result. And I realise all this is uncertainty, etc., and prolonging it. And is there a point where any politician is going to have the balls to stand up and say, actually, this is a catastrophe for our country, and we simply will not do it?
Or testicular fortitude, as somebody once said. What about me, actually? The first thing about the general election, again, that will be a choice for the new Prime Minister. Honestly, I don't know. My sense is probably not. Purely just based, you know, we have such a tiny majority at the moment. I can't, if I was to put myself in the shoes of a new Conservative Prime Minister, I can't honestly think I would want to risk that. But, you know...
There's no mandate. There's no mandate.
I can't, with retrospect, I can't speak on behalf of who the new Prime Minister is going to be.
No, I understand, but to take such a constitution...
Can I ask that if you allow me to answer questions, we'll get a microphone, otherwise we'll send it into a disorder. So that's the first general election. Personally, I don't see it, but you know, it's a question that I'm sure will be asked of the candidates on Monday, and I can put that question to them. The second point about MPs overturning it, well, as I say, this is where, you know, we're going to need constitutional guidance here about whether MPs can overturn it, or whether it's just a matter for the Prime Minister to trigger that Article 50. You know, and there will be debates to come, and you know, the government, I'm sure, has got constitutional experts coming out of its ears at the moment trying to work its way through this. I don't know. As soon as I find out, I will let you know. And having the kahunas to say this is a catastrophe, well, I refer you again, 52% of the population do not think this is a catastrophe. And, you know, I know we're very, very passionate in this area, but this is not the only part of the UK. And I would feel I was doing you, as my constituents, a disservice if I, without any consideration, said that democracy doesn't matter. That has to be a part of this.
Can I just cut in here?
No, I'm afraid not. We need to keep the microphone, sorry, that's not fair with people.
Microphone seems to be with me. Peter Fane. Can I just say, I'm Vice Chairman of the local Liberal Democrats, and I very much echo what Gavin said earlier on about, we do welcome the fact that you are keen to work all parties, and indeed no parties together with the business community. Can I just pick up a couple of things you said about the importance of cohesion? Very much accept that, and what your business group, the Keep Calm group, have been saying about the importance of some degree of certainty. Now, you went on to talk a little bit about the single market. It seems to me that is one thing that we can cohere around. We know that there is bound to be enormous economic damage from this. What can we do short of overturning the result to minimise that damage, to give people some hope for the future? And clearly, to me at least, the most important thing must be to retain our membership of the single market. You don't need any reminding from me that your manifesto was quite clear. Yes to the single market, the same manifesto that offered this referendum. And in that way, we can limit the damage, keep some people hope for the future. I don't really have any comments on that.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, as I said, one of the first things I would seek assurances from whoever the new Prime Minister is, and that can't come a day too soon. It's not just access to the single market, it's also that people who are here can stay here. I think both of those are equally important, actually. You know, and that I'll be, you know, I'll try and get assurances on them from the candidates. It's possible they'll tell anybody what they want to hear about any topic. So I think, you know, we're probably better waiting until we have the Prime Minister in situ, but you're absolutely right, there are two key first things.
Thank you. Nilla Jennings from Milton.
I make a...
Can I just make a small observation? I will take your question, forgive me. But I really should be talking to my constituents.
Yes, I agree.
Up Northern Hertfordshire and Milton and not in South Cambridgeshire.
No, you are my constituency MP.
Of course I'll take your question, but I would ask if anybody in the room isn't one of my constituents. We probably give us only people want to ask questions. We probably should reserve it for them, if that's okay.
Okay, you say don't be emotional. I've seen professors crying at the result. I've seen people hugging themselves, hugging each other in London. What was really good about Pride London last Saturday was a large number of European flags there. And this afternoon, 40,000 people are marching in London in favour of Europe. So that's my comment. So the request not to be emotional is one that's really difficult not to take on board. What's been missing in this discussion as well, nationally as well, is the question of Northern Ireland. Now, I would like you to put to whoever's going to be the MP and whoever's taking forward European progress, nobody in Ireland, north or south, wants a hard border. So please, what on earth are you going to do about that? Thank you.
So the emotional part, I'm not saying we shouldn't feel it. What I'm saying is when we weigh up the pros and cons of how we proceed forward, we need to think rationally about what will achieve the best outcome for the country. In terms of Northern Ireland, you're absolutely right. That's actually, and whether we'll be in the Scottish referendum, probably the two greatest things that people are talking about at the moment. And I heard from some of the DUP MPs in Parliament just this week how worried they are about that. And when I heard Theresa May speak in her launch speech just a couple of days ago, she was at pains to say that we do whatever we can to, we've worked so hard in Ireland to build that cohesion. This could be the worst possible thing, putting that formal hard order back in place. And I think if the goodwill is there between both sides, then I'm sure we'll find a way through that if we need to.
Jill Butler from Great Shelford. It was just a question about the possibility of a further referendum. The thing that really grates, you keep saying that 52% of people voted. In fact, if you look at it, it was only 37% of the whole population, or the whole electorate, not the population. And out of that, there was the whole of Scotland that actually voted against. We are precipitating probably a further constitutional crisis, and it is probable that Scotland will decide that they want a further referendum to leave the UK if we leave Europe. Is there going to be any change in referendum rules, such as were put forward on the petition that was put on the government's website, that in fact would ensure that at least 50% of, what was the term? It ensures that you actually have a proper majority of the entire electorate. There are 28% of people, for one reason or another, didn't vote. How can we assume what they feel about it? Normally, people who don't vote actually go with the status quo. We also have 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds who are coming up, and all the trends show that they would have been pro-Europe. The country is absolutely divided, so you either need to have an absolute clear-cut majority, which is inarguable, which I'm afraid the referendum isn't. If you have it tomorrow, it could slip a few percent either way. Or else Parliament should take its responsibility and use its sovereign right as it is. We don't have a written constitution, but as I understand it, as far as the constitution is concerned, Parliament and the monarch are the sovereign state. Everybody's talked a lot about sovereignty, but it does lie with Parliament and the monarch. And if you actually find that the decision is so important, it has to be to the people, go to the people, it should be more than 37% of the electorate that make that decision.
Okay, all right. I think the first thing to say, I suppose, you're absolutely right, not everybody voted, but that's the other wonderful, love it or hate it thing about democracy, that we don't force people to vote. And, we have to, a vote is a vote on who comes. If 3 people have turned up and 2 said leave, 1 said stay, that would have been equally valid. Given where the legislation is at the moment, yes, it would.
No, it wouldn't.
Can I respond, please? Sorry. Not sorry. If we have another referendum, then yes, who knows? We will. But this is all in the future. We're not here yet. What I'm keen to put across is I honestly and truthfully could not look myself in the mirror if I said we should ignore the results of this. We might find an alternative route to deal with it, the consequences, but people's vote matters.
Here, here.
But you take
And our vote matters as well.
But not any more than the people that voted to leave, I'm sorry.
No, but equally well.
Can we take another question, Alex, please?
Hello, thank you very much. As you may hear my accent, I'm one of the people who live in this country. I have lived here for 23 years, who are from Europe and who have actually come here in their young years to study, met the love of their life, married, and have built their lives here. Obviously, for me, you can imagine this was an absolute disaster. But thinking about it, what I would like to hear or know is what will be happening to all those Europeans who have built their livelihood here, who don't really want to go back to their own country, and what options are there for us who have contributed to this country with our taxes, with our personal efforts, with our free time, and with bringing up children in this country who will be left thinking or wondering what's going to happen to us, what will happen to our pensions, will we have the right to live in this country even if we don't take British citizenship? Because I haven't taken British citizenship for one reason, which is there is no proportional representation, which links in with what this lady said here.
So as I said, and I'll reiterate it again, it is one of the first assurances that I will see from the new Prime Minister, as we talked about the size of the single market, but also that those people that are here stay. That's fundamental as far as I'm concerned.
Hi, Kumar Rajakumar. I'm not sure exactly which part of South Cambridgeshire I'm in. I just moved into the area. I really feel that I have to express my views here. Firstly, as someone who's lived almost a third of my life in 3 continents and experienced all aspects of integrating and the challenges thereof, I think some of the views here that have been expressed in the room are extremely valid. I'll just put this question to you, and then I'll draw in your analogy about the classroom and the kids and how they voted. Okay, so we say, should an advisory and non-binding referendum, which this was, which was only narrowly won, and in which 28% of the electorate failed to vote, be acted on at face value without any parliamentary scrutiny or safeguards, or consideration of consequences, no matter how major these consequences may be, despite the abundance of untruths and dog whistle messages that were widely promulgated by the Brexit-promoting leaders of all political hues. In my experience, and I'm only 52 or 53 years of age, having lived in countries with overt racism, this has been the most xenophobic and non-inclusive referendum discussion that has occurred. All the leaders, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, Andrea Leadsom, Priti Patel, on the Labour side, Kate Hoy, what's her name, the Birmingham Edmonton MP, Gisela Stewart, they were all equally guilty of terrible dog whistling across the country to secure their political ambitions.
My suggestion would be, if you didn't catch up with what I said on Newsnight last week, then I might show that I agree with you entirely. And I guess just a small point to raise, and I don't disagree with anything you said, it's awful. The situation we find ourselves now is not the country that I love. But that's why we have to be so careful what we whip up now.
It's David Cameron's fault.
Well, I guess it was me. I think. Can we take the next question, please?
Hello, Stephen Preston from Cambourne. You're primarily a constituency MP, you're elected by the people here, and actually your party is secondary in that. If you change party, you stay our MP. You're in an unusual position in that you've had what is essentially a referendum locally. This is likely to come to another Act of Parliament, it would appear, and certainly further votes in it.
Not necessarily, but
well, there certainly will be votes in the House of Commons on this. You know what your constituency says, and will you follow that in your voting?
So the first thing to say is that there won't necessarily be a vote on this. As I say, the new Prime Minister could just choose to push Article 50. Okay, I'm going to speak really frankly with you. I hope any that you have met me individually before will know that I say what I think, and I don't say what people want to hear. It is tough, you're right. But the way I see my role, sometimes as an MP, I'm focused on really local issues. So this morning I was in Cambourne, buoying up parents trying to keep the primary school going. Now that's a really local issue. Sometimes my role is a national issue, and I have to look at the national best interests, and I have to find that balance. An MP is not only voted or selected just to work on local issues. And I have a role to play as a Member of Parliament in helping this country find a way forward. And my businesses, my scientific communities, my academic people that are here, everybody has a voice in that. So I hear your voices, absolutely I do. But I hear those too, and I also have a role nationally to help this country get back on its feet again. And if I don't think that my roles can satisfy as much as is possible all of that, then I can't necessarily back just what I'm hearing from my constituents. And it's not just, I'm not only hearing this message from constituents, I'm hearing different messages too. Not
Other
everybody.
constituents matter than your own, more than your own constituents.
No, what I'm saying is, as an MP, you have a tightrope to walk, and it's not just about the minutiae of local stuff. This is national too. If I bang on the drum and delay the referendum, I'm just saying, this is me just sharing with you how I'm thinking out loud. If my business and my scientific and my academic community tell me, Heidi, no, we can't cope with any more uncertainty, let's get on with it, that will safeguard the interests of Cambridgeshire more, then that's surely I have to listen to too. It's too early.
They also had a vote.
So, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I feel we need to sit and wait, see how the markets respond, see how the business community responds, see whether investment continues to come here, and weigh all of that up, those pros and cons, to work out what is the best route forward. Right here and now, I would do nothing more than to get a massive round of applause from everybody. Yeah, Heidi, she's going to vote against this. But that might not be in the best interest of us all. And that goes back to that point about the emotion. I need to wait and see how the situation markets respond and move on.
Hi Heidi, Richard Plaistow, Foxton.
Oh yeah.
Yes, you know me. You mentioned you may not be having a general election until 2020, part of the reason being the narrow majority you've got. I think one of the reasons we landed on this list to start with was you kept breathing down. You'll be perceived to be down the neck of the Tory party and also some of the more excitable backbenchers whose whole mission was to get us out of the EU. I mean, what guarantee do we have that we're not going to be the new PM is not going to be pushed into adopting a certain position just as a defensive reaction to Nigel Farage and the Daily Express?
Well, then, as MPs, we need to choose wisely, don't we? Pick the one who's going to retaliate against that. My mental choice, isn't it?
Hello, I'm Phil Allen, although as it turns out I'm not the one you already know. I'm from Melbourne. I agree, just taking the last point, you don't obviously have to follow only local issues but national ones, and then we equally, 60% of us voted to remain, may choose in the next election to follow someone that actually puts that. But, I know that you campaigned for Remain, and I know that we here, as a majority, a greater majority than the actual national result, voted to Remain. Anyway, I have two parts what I wanted to say. I'll try and be brief, although I think part of the trouble with the referendum campaign is everyone was too brief. It's such a complex issue, it's very difficult to be briefed about all that this entails. The second part is my calm and considered response. The first part, you mentioned emotion, is that I'm furious on many levels. And I'll try and express that in a non-emotional way. I'm furious at Mojo the Clown, and I actually appreciate what you said on the Newsnight the other day about he's not just a bumbling buffoon, he is someone with naked political ambition who has brought our country to its knees economically and constitutionally for that personal ambition, and now that everything's broken, he doesn't want to play. Furious at Michael Gove, who said he's sick of experts. The former education secretary. Trying to keep in check.
No, you do fine.
If he becomes Prime Minister, if he's elected by the Tory party, then I think the first question, every press conference should be, is that your expert opinion, Prime Minister? Because what he did was he made it impossible for any reasoned argument on Europe to take hold. Instead, people voted on emotion, as you mentioned just now. Obviously, all the other things, the blatant lies, the £350 million of the NHS, controlling immigration and staying in the single market. In fact, the whole issue in this referendum about expats is all the expats coming here and doing a brilliant job. Actually, no, sorry, we didn't call them expats, we called them immigrants, because we want to have a negative connotation of what this means. They are expats working here, working hard, working in the NHS, paying their taxes, giving funds to the exchequer, spending the money in the local community, helping the economy. Okay, I think we should have a more positive message about what the expats from the rest of Europe and the rest of the world living here bring to our community. I'll just quickly brush over the economic meltdown, the fundamental shift in society from a tolerant, open, modern, outward-looking, inclusive one to an intolerant, insular, and outdated one. You mentioned about hate crime. A good friend of ours, who lives here in South Cambridgeshire, was in Hitchin Marketplace the other day, and someone bumped into her and told her to go back to her own country. This is her country, she was born here, and she shouldn't have put up with that just because of the colour of her skin. Rushing over the most important point of the House, which is that peace in Europe for the last 70 years. We haven't had separate nationalistic nation states competing over power and scarce resources. We're throwing that away. Now, my calm and considered response part. Okay, put that out of the way. Article 50 says any member state may decide to withdraw from the Union in accordance with its own constitutional requirements. You mentioned constitutional lawyers. It seems pretty clear that because Ted Heath's government, when they negotiated entry, then had to go and put it to Parliament and pass the European Communities Act in 1972, that the only way in this country we have constitutional monarchy with a sovereign parliament. Okay? And it matters those wanting about leave that our parliament is sovereign. The only way you can repeal an act of parliament is with another act of parliament. The prerogative for the executive is not for this kind of fundamental thing. Taking away our European citizenship just on the basis of a plebiscite. I'm sorry, that's not constitutional here. I'm sure if you get to the end of this rambling bit. So given the very narrow margin of victory, the 37% of the registered electorate, in fact 26% of the population who voted, okay, the fact that maybe that very narrow margin may have been swayed by the lies. We now look at the economic crisis. Have they changed their mind when they see the way our country is going economically? Or maybe the breakup of the UK. Scotland, quite rightly, I mean, I'd love them to stay, but quite rightly they'll look and see whether or not they want to be part of Europe and not be dragged down by the Little Englanders. And most importantly, perhaps, you mentioned the peace process in Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement was fundamental, the fact that we had great European integration. You yourself have definitely said we don't want a hard border, but how on earth can we not if we go out and on our borders what mattered to those that voted? Rightly in their view, but voted to leave. So bearing in mind all of this, I think we do, yes, need to find a way to respect the result, but also to step away from an awful decision. And I call this the voting with vote base principle. Okay? Lots of people vote one way, but then they see perhaps that actually the consequences of following that through are actually a lot worse than just simply naming a vessel voting with vote base. So what we should do, and I agree with, you probably saw Michael Heseltine on Newsnight, and what he suggested, which is, yes, we must respect the result. And so as a result of that, because this wasn't an act of Parliament, this was not the way that we went. As a result of it, we respect it by sending people who passionately believe we should leave, the prominent Leave campaigners, so Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, Gisela Stewart, Cross Party, Andrea Leadsom, everyone that passionately believes in this, they are going to fight their corner really well. We send them off to Brussels and Berlin and Paris and everywhere else that matters, and we get them to start that conversation. And we see whether or not they can get a great deal, in which case, if they can, I'd be very much on board if it works for Britain. But it seems, you talk about poker, I think that we very much have a terrible poker hand if we start a two-year clock and all the Europeans know, at the end of that time, Britain has nothing, so we have absolutely no imperative to try and make that deal within the 2 years. We respect the referendum result by sending people who passionately believe that we should leave to go and make the best case. And great if they can get something to happen. But if and perhaps when they don't, that is when, having respected that first result, we then go, should we have a second referendum? Should there be a general election list? Some other way in which those who were within that very narrow margin perhaps now change their mind and express that. I'm sorry, that was very rambling. Please pick up on any of those points you'd like to.
It's about a choice of country to descend where I was going to. I had other thoughts in my head. I mean, essentially, I hope that's kind of what I said might happen, that we have to respect, we can't overturn what has happened. And it's for us to decide how the negotiating hand plays best. Do we trigger and negotiate, or do we negotiate and trigger? And that's, that is a decision for the new Prime Minister. But, in terms of agreeing that we can't override what's we can't. We just can't. We will have, riots in our streets. But yeah, the debate is how we negotiate, how we play that purple hand. And Theresa May, just out of interest in her speech this week, said exactly what you did, that the people that she would send in to negotiate are Brexiters, absolutely. Right, Kevin, you got next.
Thank you. I'm Antony from Queen Edith's in Cambridge. I believe when we were voting last week, we were voting not just for ourselves, but for future generations as well. A vote like this probably only comes around once in a lifetime. And yet the Conservative leadership candidates are talking about possibly implementing Article 50 within just 6 months in December of this year. Certainly not what many of us want for Christmas. I do wonder, given that there are so many people who didn't vote, younger people who will be affected for the rest of their lives, 16 and 17-year-olds, unlike the Scottish referendum where they were able to vote, they have no say in this referendum that will determine their future. I wonder whether there might be scope for some consultation with the general public, including younger people, and not to rush into doing Article 50 as soon as Christmas, but consulting with the people and also seeking to have bilateral talks with leaders of other European countries. I don't see that we should be rushed into something as quickly as Christmas. Do you think that there is scope for that kind of dialogue?
I'd say the scope for any of it, absolutely. I can't stress it enough, we need to get a new PM in place as soon as possible, because we're almost in free fall at the moment. I mean, the Department of Education keeps going, Home Office keeps going, but really we need that new leader in place to give us some direction. And we're doing that as fast as we can, but I agree, all of that and any of that is possible.
Thank you. Mark Long, Abington. I commute into the city each day. You've spoken about negotiations. Once Article 50 is triggered, we have 2 years, the end of which, unless everybody else, as you well know, agrees, we have to fall back on World Trade Organization rules.
Or they can choose to extend it.
Or they can choose to extend it, but the ball is in the other party's court, not ours. That is not a very strong negotiating hand.
But it's the only one we've got.
Not until once you have invoked Article 50, you kind of give me the perspective. Asking my questions, then you could reply to them. Thank you. I would ask, therefore, that Article 50 be deferred as long as possible. When people like Kelvin Mackenzie, who was editor of The Sun at the time of the Hillsborough disaster, and hardly someone who is forthcoming in a timely manner with expressions of regret and apology, writes, as he did in The Sun on Monday, that he has got buyer's regret and is, quote, fearful for the future. How many thousands more people of that 52% now regret what they have done? I am not asking you to overturn the referendum. I am merely asking you, pleading with you for the sake of my children and their children, that you take actions before invoking Article 50 to ensure that the people get a second chance to make amends for the mistakes.
As I said, that's one of the questions that will be asked of the candidates on Monday, and when I get the answers to it, I'll put it on the website so you can see all 5 different candidates, how they feel about the timing of Article 50, because it will be important to know. Okay, next, thank you, Kevin.
Hi, my name is AJ from Lockhaven. I've lived in this country for 23 years. I live in Foxton, so within your area, you'll be pleased to hear. Although I can't vote in national elections because I still have a Dutch passport, but nonetheless. First of all, I think it was absolutely right to have a referendum. I think it was excellent. The result isn't, clearly, from my perspective, but it has really, really invigorated democracy in this country. I've had discussions with my children and lots of other people, and so I think in that sense it's been an excellent thing. We are right in a mess at the moment for lots of reasons, And I'm very pleased to hear with what you're saying. Like the lady at the back, I also have children here. I don't want to move. It feels on Friday, it felt like a hurricane had hit my house. It was as bad as that. So it's quite emotional. And I have two questions. One is, a lot of politicians actually told untruths or lies, as one would say. Back, an advertising standards agency type approach to politics, where there's an independent body like the Bank of England that would vouch whether people can actually underpin the claims that they make during elections or at other times. And secondly, you said there would be riots if we would not follow through on this decision. And I can understand where you're coming from on that. The majority clearly said that they want to leave. But equally, would there not be equally riots if we just pushed come what may forward with that decision? And people would be clearly upset, and you can see that from the audience here.
Well, you could be right, I don't know. On your question about the kind of advertising agency type thing, it's an interesting one actually. A couple of people have emailed me about that. Part of me sort of felt, well, I mean, I was trying to be truthful, but I don't do spin, you know, if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. And I found myself sort of thinking, well, can you control what people say, freedom of speech, etc. But you're right, in a campaigning way. But I think you might be right, there could be something in there. If you're going to advertise a campaign, maybe things that go on literature or something like that, because I don't think you can control what people say. But literature, I didn't hear the joke there. On the buses. Buses, yeah. Definitely should have no lies on buses. Yes, you could be absolutely right, I think it's worth looking at. We've all had a little wake call, haven't we?
Yes.
And, just as a small point, this is why we need more people from normal backgrounds to get into Parliament and to get into politics. Because saying what you want to reach power has got to change. And I know many of you here today who don't know me are looking at me and thinking just another Tory. But I'm a working person. I still feel on the outside looking in, and so much of what you say I agree with, but unless there are more people like me in there, we are never going to change this.
Hello, I'm Steve Harry, a voter from Cottenham. I was very pleased at the beginning when you said this was the beginning of something, because there's been a bit of this feeling that it's actually the end of something, with everyone just sort of a mixture of rolling over and shrugging their shoulders, saying it's the end. But it seems to me that the most important thing is the constitutional thing. Now, I know we've talked a bit about this, but it's worth really reinforcing that we in this country do not, unlike the United States, have popular sovereignty. We have parliamentary sovereignty. Therefore, is there anything that you can do to increase debate in Parliament about this issue over the next few months? And also, I was interested earlier on, one of the other speakers who wasn't just an ordinary voter, he used the word England rather than Britain. And I think this is a point worth making, because if Peter Hensey, the well-known and influential constitutional historian, if he feels that Scotland's going to leave the United Kingdom in the next 10 years, I would put my money on that, frankly. And this was all avoidable, and is hopefully still avoidable. Thirdly, I'm a teacher. I teach history and politics. And boys as young as 12 have actually got quite a sophisticated understanding of what's been happening in the last 2 weeks. In my school, we had a mock referendum for all boys, and it's a state school, but single sex. The result was 313 to remain, 90 to leave. Turnout 68%. And the boys spontaneously say to me that they feel betrayed by their parents' generation.
And that, I think, is the bigger challenge than the economic one. You know, this issue amongst generations and within communities. You know, that's the bit actually that worries me more. You know, together we can achieve anything actually, but if our country is divided, that is the big hurdle. And why the right Prime Minister, I think, will have a real, you know, will do well or not, you know, bringing that back together. Just the point that you made, the most important question about can we get more debate in Parliament on this? Yes, I suspect that we'll talk about very much actually over the next few weeks. Okay, where's the mic? There we go.
Thank you, Heidi. Brian Mills from Sawston. Thank you for popping into the state.
You email me a lot.
And you,
It's okay, but...
you went into my daughter's class yesterday in Stapleford,
Oh, right.
and they voted 21 to 22 Remain.
That's
I just want you to send a message back to your current leader, which I tried to suggest before, because I think David Cameron has made a horrendous political and economical catastrophic decision for the country in agreeing to do the referendum on the terms that he did. We should have had a super majority of other people who said we've got to respect the results, but it was a complete cock-up. And really, if that message doesn't go back to him and your party, I think would be negligent. In terms of a new parliament, a new government, which it would be with a new leader, the Leave campaign had no plan. There was nothing, and now it's fractured. There's all manner of things. Should we be in or out of the single market? Should we accept free movement of people? All of those issues are completely up in the air. A new leader won't solve that question. We need, as a country, a plan or alternative plans, and to be able to vote on them and do it quickly before we have Article 50.
Yeah. To get the Prime Minister in place. You know, I wish David Cameron stayed, even just for a year, just to set us on the right path, but, you know, I have no business having Prime Minister what to do, but we need a more plan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Val Sinclair. I've only written to you once. I live in Toft. I work as a jazz singer, so you couldn't be further removed from politics than I am. Can you say anything that will give me any faith at all in any political party now? I'm not a member of any political party. I speak probably naively, but it does occur to me that the one time when our country needs political stability and continuity, the Prime Minister resigns. Both parties are in turmoil, and it seems to me that their main objective at the moment probably are their own political careers. We've heard of lying politicians, we've heard of stabbing in the back, etc. I think in some way that we've been stabbed in the back, that we've been lied to, and I've lost complete faith. I'd be ashamed actually if I were a politician, to be honest. And I'd like you to just give me some kind of reassurance. We talk about the new Prime Minister. Well, the old one, he couldn't take the pace anymore and he's gone. And it was such a terrible time to do that. We just need political stability and continuity, and not either party at the moment are giving that to us. Thank you.
You know, when I changed my career from being in business to running to be an MP, and many people know it wasn't until the Tottenham riots of 2011 that I had my wake-up call, and this feels a bit like the Tottenham riots all over again, only much worse. I was aware then that as a new MP, coming with no baggage, brand new. You know, when you start most jobs, you come in at kind of point zero and you do well and people rate you higher, or you do badly and people rate you down. As an MP, you automatically come in at 2-0 down. I don't think it was possible to get any lower, but it is. I can offer my leadership. I can knock some sense into my fellow MPs. I can work across party, which I did to build Children Refugees Home, to try and stop tax credits, which we did. So if you need somebody who will bang heads together and say, this isn't good enough, then I will work my hardest. But I've got 649 to sort out. But you have me at your service to do that, because I still find I'm on the outside looking and trying to change it.
Hello, David Williams from Melbourne. I run a couple of biotech companies in the area and employ people from South Cants. And the reason we located here was because there was a huge population of European and other people from all over the world, which was really useful to enable us to build our companies very quickly. Half of our research staff are from Europe, for example. We have 12 different countries in our companies. The problem is, I'm getting phone calls now from abroad, people saying, so is the UK open for business, can I come to your company? And I'm also having to sort of deal with staff internally who are actually terrified of being sent back. We hear from Gove that he's going to bring in an Australian-style points scheme. Well, if anyone here has ever tried to get into Australia, well, it takes years. So if you're going to have a system like that, we're just going to stop innovation in this country because we haven't got enough innovators. We never have had enough innovators in the UK to develop the economy. That's why we have to look outside into the world. So I think you've got a problem here. You've got a problem in terms of the racists in the country and in the political parties. Because if you suggest, and what I would say to you is, we need a system that allows free access for scientists and innovators and engineers to come to this country easily. And if you suggest something like that, you're going to be the worst. You're not going to be very popular. So that's what I want you to try and do if you can, and represent us here, and ignore the racists. I've got another comment actually. I used to be a director of a PLC, and if I lied to the market, our company would have been taken straight off the market. You couldn't do it. So for politicians to do that in the future of the country, it's shameful. And I really understand your challenge because I've been down to Westminster quite a lot and spoken to politicians there, and they're very disconnected from the normal folk here, and they don't understand strategy. So you've got a big job, and I'm sure we can all help you.
I'll just say okay, where are we going next, Alex?
I get one. Hello, my name's Elizabeth Lynn, I live here in Cambourne. One comment and then a question. My comment is, all these constitutional issues should be thought about before the referendums in court. Europe has not been perfect for a long time. The views about Europe in Britain have always been up and down. It was always going to be possible that this referendum was leave. And when it was called, there should have been some forward thinking and some of the constitutional issues resolved rather than this mess that we have now. That's my comment. My question is regarding the rationale of some of the Leave voters. Now, I wasn't one, so I can't speak for all of them, but my personal opinion would be a lot of feeling of disenfranchisement, a lot of feeling that it can't possibly get worse, a lot of feeling of lack of opportunity, and none of these concerns are going to be addressed now for the next 2 or 3 years because we're all going to be worried and sorting out the mess that's been created because nobody considered that actually Britain might vote Leave. So my question is, what are we going to do to address the concerns of the Leave voters feeling disenfranchised, feeling that there's no opportunity, feeling that they can't get any worse, so we might as well try and do something different?
You have absolutely hit the nail on the head there. So many people, their vote was nothing to do with Europe, actually. It's to do with, well, you, the establishment, you're not listening. And Europe was the symbol of the biggest establishment, wasn't it? And that's what they were voting against. I think it is, I see a small green shoot. I do think it is possible to do both. Whilst we have to safeguard from becoming insular and, Little Britain and hiding ourselves in the world and battling down the hatches, we do have a great opportunity to realign patriotism, make us feel proud, let us feel part of rescuing our country and coming together as communities to achieve that. As well as the thousands of emails I've received from people worried, I've also had emails from young people. Heidi, how do I get involved? Heidi, can I be a counsellor? Heidi, I've never thought about being an MP, how do you do that? So we grasp that. For me, we choose somebody like Theresa May as the Prime Minister because one of the best parts of her speech was exactly everything you just said. She talked about this was a shot from people. You know, we are not a man and a woman, but broadly speaking, we're very prosperous in South Cambridgeshire. We don't have some of the issues that we see in the north of England, you know, in places, you know, very, very different to here. And we must not forget how those people live. And we do. And it amazes me in Parliament. You know, I remember having conversations with people with the whole tax credits thing. Oh yes, I do, the minimum wage. No, the minimum wage is coming next year. Yes, but we're raising tax thresholds. No, we're doing that next year. They don't get into the detail because the detail does not affect them. And Theresa May made a big point of saying that MPs don't get it. She's not a woman, I mean, I'm saying here, like she's the Prime Minister, I'm hoping. Theresa, listen. She's not the kind of woman, she's quiet. She's actually quite shy. She's not showy. She doesn't hang around the bars. I don't hang around the bars. It's such a clique, I suppose. It's not quite lonely sometimes. But she doesn't do that. She does the job. And that tells me she will pick a team that will do the job. And we have to have the brightest, the best, the most compassionate MPs who know how the average man lives. And if we have that, I think we can achieve civility. Actually, what we need.
We've heard some Ian Young, and I can just say my confession is I haven't been married. We've had some very interesting discussion here about motivations for voting and also about understanding of the question that was being asked. Given that we had such a marginal response in favour, is it not time that MPs stood up and showed some leadership, as you are our representatives, not our delegates, and either looked at the broader picture or work out what that broader picture is going to be through negotiations? Do not invoke Article 50. 2 years, the clock is running, we will be out unless all 27 other members agree. Our poker hand, as you call it, is useless in those circumstances. So there are two things here. Firstly, we must not invoke Article 50. We must work out what the ramifications are and what we can negotiate. And having done that, we must discuss that with the people. Because polls show that there are a lot of regretters about who voted on a different basis as a protest vote without understanding the ramifications of leaving the EU. So my challenge to you as our MP is you are our representative, not our delegate, and we need leadership from the government on this issue.
Agreed. Forgive me if I'm being short of the answers, but you know, it's what people are saying. You know, I agree. We just need to get that Prime Minister in place.
Hello. So, I'm Ewan Smith. I'm from Lunstanton. I work in the technology sector in Cambridge. So I want to make 2 points and one question. I'll keep them as brief as I can. The first point is a lot of people talk about free movement of people coming to the country and working in the country. What point is rarely made is how many businesses are started by people coming from Europe, particularly into areas like Cambridge. So it's not just coming and paying taxes, it's also coming and creating jobs for other people to work in, businesses for other people to work in. The second point is, and this is where the emotion comes in a little bit, and the third point will be a little bit calmer. I don't think any Brexiters, if the vote was 52-48 the other way, would have given up at that point. They would carry on fighting. Hence why the motion, which was on the parliamentary website, was actually created by a Brexiter who thought the vote was going to go the other way in the first place. The third point is that how much do you think the frustration of people who voted to leave the EU, the protest votes, or the people who just feel the political system is not for them, is caused by the electoral system, which means an awful lot of people, their votes make no practical difference whatsoever in any past the post election, because it doesn't matter which way they vote, the same people are going to be elected because it's safe seats. And how much do we need to change, work to change that system to actually re-engage all the people of the country into our electoral system and our politics.
Just on your first point about business owners, you're absolutely right. And one of the people at my meeting yesterday was one of the directors from the Federation from Small Businesses, and that's exactly what she said. She said it's not just jobs, it's job creators, and that's why we need to get that assurance as fast as we can that those people can stay. I did hear anecdotally, so I don't know whether there's any truth to this, but I heard anecdotally that the administrative burden of identifying who all the people were and processing and getting rid of them will be so enormous. Practically, we can never do it anyway, but that's pure anecdote, you know, we need it, putting it writing if you like. Sorry, forgive me. Your last point was about... the voting system, yes. You know, you're absolutely right. I think the way we vote is one element of why people are disenfranchised, but the other part that we've been talking about is the way MPs behave, and I think that's a big part of it as well. You know, I urge you to get involved. I got angry. That's what I did. You know, I need more people to do that. Come join me. Oh, Buffles. Sorry, I'm allowed to ask Buffles out of microphone. But he's very, this is Antony, who's come all the way to videos for now to put on the website, so he probably deserves a question, especially.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I used to work in Whitehall and Westminster for ministers of all three of the main parties, so I was the Parliament channel for fun. My question is actually to everybody in the audience. What we've been doing in Cambridge, and I span Cambridge and South Cambs, it just depends on which side of the road I happen to be on. We've been doing some democracy in action workshops. Would you like to do something similar in South Cambs so you can find out basically just how the system works and find out some of the things that I found out from the inside, in particular not just at the EU level, but also in terms of devolution and the Greater Cambridge City deal, which also affects all of you. And then finally, we've got well over 100 people, nearly 200 people here. What's the one small thing that each and every single person in this room is going to do as a result of this meeting, whether it's one small action or one small behaviour change? Now, it can be putting a post on Facebook, it could be emailing Heidi, just The point being, can we as a collective be greater than the sum of our parts? So, thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Lots of workshops, I like the idea of that. Perhaps you can put something on the website. Thank you. Right, where are we?
So I'd like to apologise because it's quite a mundane question.
That's okay. I'll take mundane this week, really.
I'm Alexis Cockcroft, I'm in Arrington. The current system for the development and regulation of medicines, headquartered in the UK, is an effective system for access of patients to medicines and the efficient use of scientific and medical experts for the assessment of medicines. What will be the effect on the UK of leaving this system?
I have absolutely no idea. I'm sorry. I need to take that question away. Did you get that down that time? Thank you. And perhaps if you wouldn't mind saying hello to Natalie then, we can take your email address.
Hello, Heidi. I'm Chris Blenko. I live in Papua.
Hello.
Two observations and a question. My first observation is that I clearly didn't do it very well. I was a Remain voter. I was distressed as everybody else. But about 4 or so ago, I left the bubble of Cambridgeshire and South Cambs, and I have to say, it's not very popular to say, but it is a bubble, and I've understood more what a bubble it is this afternoon listening to this. And I went to go and campaign for Remain down in North Devon. Not at all successfully, I'm sad to say, but I did come away understanding that there is another world out there, and I think that you have described that very well this afternoon. I had another observation, but you know what it is when you start talking, you begin to forget. So let me get straight, in that case, to my question. I was going to ask you who you're going to support as leader of the Conservative Party, but I think I've heard the answer to that. And I think personally that that's a very good choice. But given that what you've heard about distrust of politicians, about the qualities that people are expecting from their politicians, could you reassure us of the qualities that you'll be looking for in that choice? And would you take back a message from us loudly about the qualities that you've heard that we demand of our politicians this afternoon?
Absolutely. You know, I think when you panic, you find things funny, don't you? And some of this week you had to laugh because, gosh, who's going now in the Tory party or the Labour party? But actually, when you stop laughing, it's not acceptable, is it? Absolutely unacceptable. I think South Cambridge is a little boy. And I find it hard as a business person trying to penetrate it, as who I believe is an honest person trying to penetrate it. I don't play games. Some of you may have been disappointed with some of my answers this afternoon, but I am what I am. And we have to... The hardest part of challenging the behaviour you see is the machine locks down around you. Now, I broke away from that machine, from my whips who don't call me anymore, they certainly don't email me, fairly early on. And I've been pleasantly surprised by the number of other Conservative predominantly MPs who whisper to me in corridors, Heidi, well said. We didn't dare say that, but well said, well, I'm a minister, so I can't. But we have to fight that. We have to fight that with every fibre in our being. We are there because you elected us. We exist because you elected us. And the minute we forget that, it's time to go home. So I am not controlled by the whips, I am not controlled by my party. I picked a party because you have to pick a team. But I have no issue with going forward and calling out unacceptable behaviour, and I shall continue to do so.
Hi, I'm Maria from Carpen. So my understanding is that quite a lot of our rights are derived from EU law, like maternity leave, quite a lot of work at things to protect workers. What reassurance can you offer that those will still be protected if we leave Europe? That they're not all going to be abolished or removed from us?
Yeah, it's a huge question actually, and it's also the question mark around some of the climate change goals, and there's all sorts of things that we've just got used to that come out of Europe. Sorry to keep harping on about Theresa May, but one of the other things that I liked that she said was that the first thing she would do would be to set up a complete separate cabinet position and government department, just to look at this, to make sure that all the good stuff, all the funding, all the the benefits that we've got. I was pleased to say actually that she wouldn't now look to take us out of the European Court of Human Rights. Absolutely right, and I suspect that's why there was never much of a plan from the Leave side, because it's so complicated and there's so much of it. I just remember I stopped looking at that for a while, haven't I? Sorry, I've forgotten you, sorry. It's massive. But you're right, all the good stuff, because there is so much good stuff, we have to make sure that, hey, let's look at the positive, we might even make it better. That's the way to look at it. But certainly we need to safeguard it, certainly. I'm drawing up a list, by the way, so if there's anything that's peculiar about your industry that you think I might not be aware of, then do it well, and I'll it's honest.
Hello, my name's Alan Hodge, I'm resident in Cambourne here. I agree with sort of attitude about the referendum. We can't overturn it, that this is democracy. However, surely it is the duty of Parliament to make sure that going forward we get the absolute best deal for Britain. Now, if in the coming weeks and months it becomes patently obvious that the best place to be is to remain inside the European Union, then surely Parliament, irrespective of what the referendum result was, surely you've got to actually go forward and actually say, no, the referendum, yeah, we hear what the people say, but the best position is to stay in the EU.
And that's, as you say, it's where it hinges on how quickly and if we press that trigger of Article 50, isn't it? Whether who we send in to do the negotiations and how, whether it's a Brexit and how good a deal you can get. But this again hinges around the second referendum. If the deal doesn't look good enough, do we put it to the people?
Are Europe going to play ball?
Are the EU going to play ball? They've already inevitably they're playing hardball at the moment because they are hurt. But if they hold their position and refuse to negotiate until we actually activate the Article 50, then surely, as I think as other people have mentioned, this leaves Britain in a pretty poor negotiating position, doesn't it?
Which is one of the other reasons why we need to get the choice of PM right, because I am a firm believer, I don't think I'm naive, I'm a firm believer in people make the difference. And depending on who we choose as Prime Minister and their capabilities of negotiation, relationship building, and the team that they choose will be critical. Watching the body language of the people in Europe, are they going to deal with us? Are they going to talk to us? Are they going to continue like Jordan this week? But it's absolutely likely as well.
Heidi, hello. My name's Colin Goodwill from Papworth, and the last gentleman from Papworth, and I
But you do email me.
I have been
Yes.
emailing you. And I have been congratulating you on your fortitude, but not of the kind the gentleman at the back had in mind. I genuinely am unclear at this moment, and this is the only comment I'm going to make on going backwards, about whether or not Parliament approved the basis of the referendum. I rather have it in mind that Parliament did. If I'm right, I'm just going to leave that one hanging there. Some great person said about 200 years ago that something approximating to a great civilization cannot be destroyed from without until it has destroyed itself within. Now, I, like a lot of people here, felt physically sick for 2 days. I voted Remain, but I've been in business for a long time now. I've run businesses up in the northwest and the northeast, and I've been a manufacturer and an exporter all around the world. We have now, whether we like it or not, I'm afraid, we have an internal predicament, and I would like to think that we can handle this without allowing ourselves to turn ourselves into little Englanders. There are all sorts of constitutional possibilities and problems, and I don't even want to go there. But we also have a major external challenge. And I was intrigued to hear you describe that as a game of poker. But whether or not we like that, that is what it is going to be. Nobody playing poker discloses their hand. Nobody in business or anything else puts their negotiating position on the table. In fact, it was, in a sense, one of the manifest absurdities of the Prime Minister having to go to try and negotiate a better deal and put it all out there in the public domain before he went. But we are where we are. I keep saying that. And we have to choose the right leader, and then that leader has to appoint the most powerful negotiating team available. And I don't care which party they come from, right, but I want them to be experienced negotiators. In the meantime, I really do believe that we can all do something to help. Everybody who is in business or has any sort of connection, whether they just be friends in the other, on the other side of the channel, should be getting in touch on a very positive basis with all their contacts. As a business, as a company in Cambridge, I would be staggered if they didn't have business counterparts with whom they have been conducting business satisfactorily for a long, long time. And we have to get those personal communications going. And we have to mount a charm offensive, because, boy, this week we're not really terribly popular. And we have to do it, we have to put it right ourselves. Yes, we can hammer our politicians, and as you'll know, I had a few pretty strong comments to make in my emails, if you had time to read them. The very fact that no politicians on a meaningful basis, apart from, so far as I'm concerned, your good self, saw any of this coming. The disaffection that came into those blue areas, or came out of those blue areas on the night of the vote, was staggering. And I think we are entitled to ask ourselves, how on earth were all those MPs so unaware of the level of anger to the extent that the whole of the Westminster bubble, if we have to call it that, got such a kicking. Looking positively, we have to have the strongest possible team, and somehow we have to restore the feeling of integrity and respect for that on the part of our negotiators and on the part of all members of Parliament.
Absolutely right, you know, we all have a role to play in this, so thank you.
My name is Sarah Root and I live in Litlington. My reaction after I got over feeling sick to my stomach on Thursday was to ask what this meant and start doing some research. I looked for information on something I'd heard on the internet about problems with the number of negotiators that the UK could field for exit negotiations, and found that in March, Gus O'Donnell, who was previously Cabinet Secretary to 3 Prime Ministers, said in an interview, I think it was to BBC, that he very much doubts the UK is capable of negotiating an exit from the EU within 2 years. In March, in this interview, he said he found the prospect a bit scary. I think it's terrifying. The Treasury analysis of the immediate impact of leaving the EU is up on the parliamentary website, and it makes fairly depressing reading, to say the least. Now, given that we have heard here, and also elsewhere on the internet, Facebook and everywhere, that Leave voters voted Leave for a number of reasons. Hatred of the EU not being necessarily the highest, it was merely the scapegoat for a feeling of being disenfranchised, dispossessed, lacking a voice. Given the likely economic effect of leaving the EU, how is that going to help their position? Surely Article 50, as others have suggested, invoking Article 50 should be delayed until there is some plan. Failing to invoke it is not failing to listen to those Leave voters. We can act within Britain for their concerns. We do not have to leave the EU in order to do that. Thank you.
Toby next. Hello, sorry.
Hello, Chris Titmus, Cambourne resident. We talked today about the importance of next Prime Minister dealing with Brexit as well as possibly the breakup of the Union. During the campaign and today we've talked about the democratic deficit and sovereignty. With those two combined, do you think it's fair that only one person in this room is going to get to whittle down the candidates for the next Prime Minister to and that less than 1% of the population will get to vote on the final candidate?
I don't know, is your question leading to it should be our general election? I don't know, because the rules of picking a candidate are the rules, and I'm certainly not in a position to be able to change them now. Had it come in during peacetime, if you like, I don't think anybody would have particularly noticed. But given the significance that is associated with it, and I appreciate it's less than ideal. And it's not even like I can say, well, you have to trust us MPs to make the right choice, because I guess that's the best thing I feel like doing at the moment. But I'm certainly happy to hear if anybody's got any views on why Tracy is not the right person. I always drop me on. Can I just return my handbag? There's something ringing. I'm sure it's not my phone.
As a calling procedure, as on a range of things, you create space for yourself with difficult, complex and very important decisions. And this decision is subject to none of those. Yet it is probably one of the most important decisions we have made. So I feel there has to be some constitutional safeguards. The English Constitution is rich in such safeguards to prevent the misuse of power and wrong decisions being implemented. But I strongly feel we should actually have a look at that to see how the interests of this country are going to be protected, because clearly they don't think they are at the moment. Getting back to the point made earlier, I feel I've spoken to a number of people in the village I represent, which is Bassingbourne, and there is certainly a feeling I've spoken, particularly my business to people who actually go to Leave, and they said, I didn't know it would have this result. What I've heard back is, well, I voted Leave because I've got problems about the EU. I didn't really want to leave, I just wanted to register the fact that I've got problems in one or two areas. And given the choice and on mature reflection, I might have done something different. Since the referendum, a lot of facts have come to light now. So it's basically a tenet of the local government that if new information comes to light, you can review the decision. You can say to yourself, these facts weren't available, we have another look at it. And I suggest there must be grounds for doing that. And the other point I was going to make is that what I'll be concerned about is the new leader of the Conservative Party, whoever they are. I would be very disturbed if I felt they had a mandate merely to implement Brexit. I don't think that is the national mood. The national mood is expressed in a variety of ways, and I think my interpretation of the national mood is there are aspects of the EU we are unhappy with. Go away and do something about it, right? Now that something about it does not necessarily mean leaving. It means talking and seeing what we can do. And therefore, I would really looking for assurance, I suppose, that if, which I think it probably will be, it turns out that leaving is not in the national interest, the government of the day, which I imagine will be a Conservative one, can say, we've reviewed the position, we've looked at it, it does appear that staying in an EU with perhaps some adjustments around the edge or whatever, is in our national interest, and that's therefore what we should do. So that is what I feel would be an act of statesmanship, an act of mature reflection.
And I do, you're absolutely right, and that's why that comes from the front, that comes from leadership, which is why I am adamant, and I will tell every Conservative MP who will listen to me, why anybody who has been in the Brexit camp is the last person that we need to be leading on the right road, isn't it? Having somebody that voted to remain, or at least was neutral, and Theresa was remain, but very cleverly kept her nose out of it. I suspect she knew that she had some pieces to pick up if she was slapped afterwards. Right, that's my
Hello there, Deborah Lovelock, we live in Cottenham. First of all, I want to echo what most people have said in the room, that when my family woke up on Friday morning, we were deeply saddened, appalled that we could let ourselves get into this mess. And also since then, why we even had to vote, and then the shenanigans that have been going on with the politicians. But I do have to say, this is only the second time I've ever heard you speak, and I think, you and the young politicians that are now in place, that I think that we should all be very, very pleased that you are.
Thank you, appreciate that. Well, somebody burn me down there. Come back. I've got my head back on my arm.
You know I didn't get that on film because the battery ran out.
Heidi, I think at the beginning of the meeting, if I heard you correctly, you said that you believed in free movement of people, and I do, and you believe that we should belong in a single market. I do. But those are the two crucial issues for the EU. So if you believe in those two items, there is no issue. It's just we are members of the EU, and whether you are voting for the local interests or national interests, if you believe in those two items, there's no further discussion. That is the core of the EU's beliefs. So as long as you stick to those, that's exactly where we need to be. Thank you.
An interesting statistic or fact I learned just recently was that the parts of the country that have the most immigration, the most free movement of people, such as Cambridgeshire, or Southern Cambridgeshire and London, support staying in the EU and have the most experienced immigration. It's the parts of the country that have the least immigration that want to come out because of that perception. And that just tells you how big the rift is between people's understanding and trust and belief, etc., in what politicians tell them.
Hello, my name is David Williams from Oakington, and I'm very upset, particularly at the lost opportunities my three daughters will now suffer if we leave the EU. When an Act of Parliament is passed, MPs have lots of opportunities to think again. A bill is voted on 3 times, I understand, and even then the House of Lords can send it back. If you get those sorts of opportunities, why can't we have the same opportunity to think again and vote in a second referendum?
And I don't disagree with the essence of that at all. The difficult constitutional difficulty we have is them's not the rules we've got at the moment, and we have to work with the rules that we have. I'm not saying we can't change them for the future, I'm not saying we can't change them, but the basis on which the referendum is run, of course, unfortunately is passed. But I think our whole constitution is going to be looked at against the consequence of this.
Hello, Alan Briggs from Whittlesford. We have parliamentary democracy, it may not be perfect, but we've had it for hundreds of years, we know how it works, there's all sorts of checks and balances. And we have referenda, of which, none of us have much practical experience. Can you make some sort of commitment that you'll do your level best to make sure we never have a referendum again?
An easy question. Yes. Well, it's another one like that besides.
A observation, not a question, but I think some in the Brexit camp need reminding is that this was a referendum simply on whether we stay within or leave the EU. This was not an election on a particular manifesto. For example, it's now been treated as a plebiscite on immigration by, if you're unfortunate enough to read the Daily Express or listen to Nigel Farage, and that needs to be reinforced.
Being told that's the end.
Oh, okay. Is there anybody who hasn't asked a question? This gentleman has been very patient, if you may, sorry. It's the caretaker, it's a lot building, sorry. I'll just reiterate again, honestly, genuinely, if you haven't had your question answered, either email me in or make it today, and or we'll advertise the dates of these, more meetings like this so you can come back again. And I guess the positive side of that, a couple of weeks on, we'll, be more clarity on things, so I'll have some more answers. This gentleman.
We've had quite Peter Draper, sorry, from Melrose. We've had quite a lot about this relationship between Parliament and referendum. What is very disappointing is that when you look at Hansard for the discussions for the Referendum Act, there's virtually, as far as I can see, no discussion at all about any kind of minimum majority. None at all, as if nobody foresaw it. And if you'd had a majority of one, apart from the numerous recounts that there would have been, would you honestly have gone with one majority? And at the beginning, you made a very clear statement that you felt bound by every single vote in the referendum that was cast. It was all of equal value. And yet, a few years ago, under the coalition, when there was a real chance to put forward proportional representation so that people's votes had a much better chance of counting, what happened? The Tories scuppered it and wouldn't consider it. So we've got one rule for the referendum, which happens occasionally, and one for on all politics. And that seems to be absolutely wrong. And particularly when so much is hanging on this referendum, as we've heard very well put by so many people, that I'm very surprised you really feel you can hang on to every single vote on that when it doesn't seem to matter in our normal electoral system.
Because purely the risk of us treating some voters as having less worthy a voice than others. I feel we all, whether it's an old person, young person, people talk about the age gap in the way people have voted, an older person is going to live with consequences for as long as a young person, but what kind of society are we if we start deciding that an old person's voice doesn't matter? I think it's dangerous and slippery. Do I agree that there should have been perhaps more legislation around the referendum and the margin? Absolutely, but the legislation is as it is, so what we have to focus on is finding the best way out of this and the best steps forward for Britain. Of course, today has been so much, and thank you everybody for coming. I do hope you found it useful. So it's the start of many more such meetings. The purpose of today was for me to hear all of this, and I understand how people feel, but I also want us to keep moving forward. We have to find the best constitutional, social, moral, whatever it might be, the best path forward. And you have a powerful role to play in that. Keep telling me. And I encourage my other MPs, I've noticed on Twitter actually some other MPs are getting a hard time for not putting on a meeting like this, so I shall be encouraging as many as possible to do that. But especially important in those areas that did vote to leave. Because we need to understand, for all of us, how to find the best route forward out of this.
Proportional representation might help.
Yeah, proportional representation. I personally haven't been scared of proportional representation. I think if you do a good job, people will vote for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Oh, so hello Robert, please be nice, your friend.
Madam MP,
Hello.
I didn't want this afternoon to go without somebody saying thank you very much.
Yes.
You have... Like many of the people here, I was distraught on Friday morning, and I have to say I'm still thoroughly depressed. I cannot believe that our country has done what it is about to do. So the political, diplomatic, careful views that you've expressed this afternoon and helped us all to understand the big picture, not just around the implications of this decision, but around what some will perceive to have been rather scurrilous Leave campaign, which I think can hardly be described as a campaign because, to be frank, I was appalled the way whatever facts were presented by anybody, the response was that it was scaremongering. I don't think that it did either side in the debate a great deal of power of good. That said, we're where we are. Thank you very much for your time. You have heard, you have listened, and I can assure those of you who may not know our MP that I know that she will take these messages forward. Thank you very much, and Godspeed in getting our wishes forward. Thank you.